In this video, we will show how to install the component repair kit BA21N0F0102. This repair kit includes all necessary components to repair common failures on the main power supply board. If the TV has no power, it is most likely because of a blown fuse and failure of other preceding components. This kit is designed to fix those problems. I have removed the board from the back of the TV, and I will start by replacing the fuse. I pull out the old one and slide in the new one. I will start by desoldering the capacitor on the back side of the board. This capacitor may have glue holding it to the board, so you may need to very carefully use a blade to separate the capacitor from the board. After I have removed the original capacitor, I will bend the legs on my replacement and get it lined up correctly in place on the board. Then I will flip the board to the back side and solder the capacitor in place. I will not mention this after each component, but after you have soldered each component to the board, be sure to trim the legs as close as possible to the board. Next, I will desolder the resistor at location R611 and the diode at location D608. I will do these at the same time since they are right next to each other on the board. After I have removed them from the board, I will take my replacements and bend the legs on each component and slide them through the holes and then solder them to the board on the back side. Next, I will desolder the diodes at location D607 and location D609 and replace them with the same process of getting the component flush to the board and bending the legs to fit through the holes. If your board does not have a diode at location D609 on the front of the board, flip the board over and locate the diode at location D609A and remove it. After you have removed the component at D609A, you can flip the board back over and install the diode that comes with your repair kit at D609. Then again, I will solder it in place with the iron on the back side. As always, be sure to trim the legs on the component as close to the board as possible. Next, I will desolder the diodes at location D601, D602, D603, and D604. After I've removed these components, I will again bend the legs on the diodes and get them all in place through the holes on the board. Then flip the board over and solder them in place on the back side. Next, I will desolder the transistor at location Q602 and replace it. You may need to bend the pins to get them to fit through the holes in the board. Be sure to do this gently so that they do not break. After getting the component through the holes in the board, I will solder it to the board on the back side. Next, I will unscrew the transistor at location Q501 and then flip the board over and desolder it from the board. I will bend the pins on the component to line up the holes on the board and then screw it into place on the heatsink. Although we do not use any in the video, it is recommended to use heatsink compound on the transistor before you attach it to the heatsink. Next, I will flip the board over and then solder the component into place on the back side. The next component is found only on the back side of the board at location Q501. I am removing some of the solder using my solder wick and iron. Next, I will use my hot air gun to loosen the component and remove it from the board. If you are using a hot air gun, be sure not to get too close to the board as it may cause the board to bubble. Then next, I will use the wick and iron to clean up the pads. Now I will put some solder paste down on the pads and then put the components on the pads. Next, I will use my iron and solder to attach the component to the board. The last component I will desolder is the diode at location D653. This diode is also only located on the back side of the board. Again, I am removing some of the solder using my solder wick and iron. Then I will use the hot air gun again to loosen the component and remove it from the board. Once again, be sure not to get the hot air gun too close, as it may cause the board to bubble. Then I will clean up the pads using my solder wick and iron. Then put down some solder paste onto the pads and then put the component on the pads. After the component is lined up, I will use my iron and solder to attach the component to the board. We have successfully installed this component repair kit. If you have any further questions regarding your repair, simply post a question in the comment section below. We strive to learn and share new TV repair tips every day. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and grow with us. Share our videos with your friends to help us spread the savings, and don't forget to hit that like button.